So, a few things I want to touch on before I get into the main topic of the week, and as I let the video play, and I'll explain the video in just a moment. If you want to understand what I'm doing in this video here on State of the Frame, before I get into the main topic, there was a half of this video that came beforehand that kind of explained why I'm here, what I'm doing, and went over some other smaller details about recent things in Warframe. They're just maybe worthy of going back to and watching. If I were to post a video to the forums, it would be a main topic as opposed to the entirety of both topics. I might post both topics. I'm not quite sure yet. I'm not quite sure when I'll post these first State of the Frames. I'm not sure when I'll post these State of the Frame videos to the forums to let people know that I'm here and I'm doing this. But, yeah, the first video has more details about why I'm here and what I'm doing. And so, what I want to talk about today, or actually, no, before I get to that, one thing that I forgot to note in the first half of the State of the Frame, Episode 1, The Ramble, I didn't have a lot of great assets like this with a video that really demonstrates what I'm trying to highlight. I will have more of that for next time. I will even have a better video than this next time, although the quality is still a tiny bit reduced from what it should be because I don't have a higher quality capture card at the moment. We'll look at getting one of those within the near future. But for now, I will work with what we have and will continue to improve as kind of the motto of Ramble Entertainment, a work in frickin' progress. So, yes, welcome to State of the Frame, Episode 1, Part 2, the topic of the week. The topic of the week is AOE weapons, and what me and my girlfriend tried to do in this video here to the side of me is demonstrate what the game looks like when you're not using an AOE weapon. And right now, it's us using no AOE weapons, no powers. Eventually we'll switch to no AOE weapons with powers, and then AOE weapons without powers, and then of course wrap up with going ham, tryhard mode. And so, again, most of the time you're going to be using powers. That, just makes sense. It's part of what you do in Warframe. You get to spam powers. It's not like a game like Destiny where it's just like, well, about every 5 minutes you get a cool power and then you get to wait. No, instead in Warframe you get to just throw out powers. However, the video is really about emphasizing what the game looks like with these AOE weapons that can really dominate the field compared to their counterparts that don't have large areas of effect. And of course the weapons I refer to are really the Similar, the Ignis, Penta, Adamus, Sonic Core, Static Core, and especially those weapons in there that really dominate without killing you, non-explosive AoE weapons. And they really only came into the game, these non-explosive, non-killing you AoE weapons came into the game when that was really around the time that Syndicates released their primaries. It was the Similar, the Penta. You can look at the Telos Bolter, the the Sancti Tigris as weapons that still are area of effect weapons and dominant, and the weapons that people refer to as most used. And so the reason I want to analyze this is because it really creates a dearth of what is the most efficient weapons. There's just so few. It's such a narrow category, and granted, that category is starting to grow, but what really happens to a lot of these weapons that we do get to keep? Again, one of the highlighting factors for this game is variety. Variety is really kind of the king in Warframe. In fact, it's kind of the queen, too. It's the princess and the prince, and it's the jokers and the plebs and the servants. It's the entire castle and the wall around the castle. Actually, let me revise that just a tiny bit. Variety is the castle of Warframe, but the king, in fact, and with most games that are a bit or even a lot grindy, is efficiency. No matter what, players will always try to be the most efficient. Again, this is reiterated with things like Draco. Before Draco, it was Vivor. Before, for those who played Destiny, what you did was you went to the loot cave, and then, when the loot cave didn't work, you had to grind strikes like the game wanted you to, and granted, they improved the strike system, which was why people were using the loot cave to begin with. The same thing could be said with the Division. There will always be a most efficient path through the Dark Zone for farming. These things just exist. Players just want to find efficiency. The same thing will basically be said for weapons then. There will always be a Galahorn. There will always be a Midas, again, for you Division players. And very much in Warframe's case right now, it's kind of like, well, there will always be a Simular, Penta, and Ignis. And then alongside those, as secondaries, there will always be a Adamus and Sonicore. These weapons just kill better. In the 5 to 10 seconds it might take for something like a Soma, a Prisma Gracata to kill 5 to 10 enemies, it takes those weapons 1 second. You hold, you spray, or maybe if you have the Simular, you go pew 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 pew. I hate the sound of the Simular. DE, please nerf the sound of the Simular. In fact, especially with Mirage. I respect that build, Mirage Simular build, but, man, that thing is more annoying than Spam Caliber when he finally got his sword. Dear God. So anyway, the real question I feel like, want to ask ourselves here on Save the Frame for this first episode is, what happens with these weapons, especially with Damage 3.0 potentially being this year? Who knows? It might be next year, but I have a gut feeling we'll see Damage 3.0 by the end of the year. Don't trust my gut, guys. So, I think that one of the things that I love about Warframe that should really shine here is the lack of nerfing. Yes, nerfing it did exist a lot, especially before I was a hardcore player. But now, nerfing is pretty here and there. They tend not to nerf too many things. You'll notice that they were talking for a long time on the dev streams about Ashe kind of receiving being more involved with his 4th ability instead of just spamming 4 or spamming R1 and triangle, or on Xbox what would be right bumper and Y. Instead, they've stopped talking about it. The reason they've probably stopped talking about it is because when they released the Mesa rework, it was nice at first, and, I was kind of one of those people who said, this isn't a nerf, it just kind of makes you more involved, and yes, your, range of vision is kind of reduced to 75% of the map for a period of time, and then there's that ring around it, and yes, you can pop in and out and just keep that ring from really going down. Might be a tiny bit inefficient, might be a lot inefficient, but really, at the end of the day, the thing that nerfed Mesa the most was the amount of mods it takes to really make her peacemakers as efficient as they used to be, or anywhere near as efficient as they used to be. You almost need a full complement of all 8 mods to really focus in on her peacemakers. And yes, you really only focus in on peacemakers most of the time with Mesa anyways. Yes, there are other builds for her, but when it comes to after her rework, you're just doing peacemakers. There really isn't much room for continuity to make sure your Shattered Shield and the range of the Shattered Shield can go up, and all those extra little opportunities. And I believe, personally, this is why we're not really hearing about Ashe right now. This might change. They might figure out how to make Ashe more involved while making him near as or just as efficient. But again, DE is a bit more careful about how they nerf, and a lot of times, and you can kind of, look at Atlas, you can look at the focus system, things might come into the game a bit underwhelming compared to overwhelming, and then instead of having to nerf, all they have to do is buff. And that's nice, because obviously, oftentimes, buffs are taken a lot better than nerfs. And so, Again, bit of a ramble, but the point is, I don't think that we will see a nerf on AOE weapons. I think, if anything, what we will actually start to see is, as players get into the latter tiers of play, the higher levels of play, you will see more AOE weapons involved. Obviously, console players will be getting the static core now, a few other weapons, but I think we'll start to really see AOE come into a larger portion of the game, just as you kind of started with bows early on in the game. Bows right around the mid-tier of the game, basically mid of the middle section of the game when you're playing start to drop off. Maybe the high middle section, but I feel like towards the high tier you're just not using bows because they're nowhere near as efficient. You start to learn that you want to spray something because it just kills faster because there's so many enemies coming at you, whereas having to do this... I just killed 2 enemies. Okay, I can hold down the trigger and I actually just killed 5. So there's obviously a growth, and that kind of growth happens in every game. You look at, again, I was playing Final Fantasy recently in between updates, and you stop using Fire and Fira at some point, and you start getting into the higher tier magics, Firaga, Blizzaga, Flare, Ultima, because, duh, they work better. And so you want to go with the things that work better. You want to go with AoE. And we will likely continue to see that, where AoE weapons continue to come out. But I do want to return to the point of variety is king. And even the devs have talked about this to an extent in 72, DevStream 72. Steve even made a comparison between Warframe and World of Warcraft. He said... in Warcraft, you basically pick a character. World of Warcraft, you pick a character, and you level that character, and you level their weapons, and you get to, like, 90 or 279 or whatever the hell levels are in Warcraft anymore. And you do that, and then if you want another character, you have to do that all over again, whereas with Warframe, you transfer the mods, and you get all these different Warframes, and you form them, and you just share them all between this one... I won't spoil that for some players who might not know about that, but you share them between this one particular person, the operator, potentially, or this one entity, whatever that may be. And so, if variety is king, how do we get back to some of the weapons we have really enjoyed with our game? How do I get back to the Prisma Gracrata? Not all of you love that weapon. You know, some of you are going to be like, oh, MR fodder. That's my nerd voice. Like, my voice isn't nerdy enough. I'm going to keep doing it. So, yeah, how do we get back to weapons like that? And I think there are some really cool hints we can actually take from things that are coming into the game and some of the things that the devs have said, and, you know, going into Damage 3.0, whenever that's going to be. I think we can have some real hope for seeing a lot of these weapons we love at least make some kind of a comeback. There will be those who say AoE weapons are a personal choice. There will be those who say, you know, red crit is also pretty competitive, but red crit just... still, you have to focus in on each individual enemy, and no matter the amount of time, you can do something like just put a few similar balls into one spot, and even if you fire 3 similar shots, and it only takes 3 shots from any single or one line of sight weapon to kill 3 enemies, those 3 similar balls can suddenly kill 5 to 10 enemies. Same thing with the Ignis, especially if you put the extra area of effect mod on it. I forget what that's called. My bad. And if you put that extra area of effect mod on it, you can just hold down the trigger, and in 5 seconds you've killed 10 enemies. That might actually even pop up in this video, where me and my girlfriend are doing that with the Ignis. If we do not get to the end of the video, I plan to post this video with my content anyways, so that will just be within the State of the Frame episodes on the Ramble-Entertainment channel. Getting back to the point, dear God, Scott, how do we put variety back in the game? So let's go ahead and take a look at the Mutalisc Cernos. Mutalisc Cernos, for those who might not know, or might just consider it MR fodder and never really used it, has these cool toxic lightning bolts that fall from the sky and create a toxic cloud. Now, there are going to be those who say, yeah, but it does nothing. But that there is a concept and a system within the game that could potentially do something. And what, again, you know, like, you look at somebody like Mugamu's video on the Mutilis Cernos, he kind of jokingly said, you know, like, at the beginning said, these are the things it could almost do. He didn't say that in his own... He said that in his own words, where it was just like, these are the things it could potentially do, but it doesn't, because it doesn't scale, because it doesn't alter the damage. It's just toxic, and it does, like, 5 damage per second, which sucks. That sucks, but what if it did scale? And what if that's turned on in Damage 3.0? Suddenly, there's this awesome area of effect bow that doesn't even need to hit its targets. And toxic can be converted into some of the... most powerful dual elements in the game, corrosive and viral. You got it. I got it, guys. And so there's one idea, but also there's the idea that what that does, that passive that the Mutilis Cernos is capable of, is converted into mods. Maybe the Mutilis Cernos keeps its toxic proc to itself, but there's like a lightning mod where you put this lightning mod, kind of like the explosive mod for bows, on the Paris. Let's just go with the Paris for shits and giggles. And so you fire the Paris, and 2 lightning bolts are called down from the sky, and they generate a 15-meter area of effect. And just like they showed off with Volt in the recent DevStream 72, Volt is now basically going to be an incredibly powerful control frame who uses lightning to stunlock enemies. Duh, why wasn't he doing that before? He wasn't doing that before because it takes time to implement such things in gaming. I'm not going to be one of those people who are facetious within my comments. I appreciate what the devs do, and I want to continue to appreciate and really cultivate that if I'm to have people who watch my videos. Those are the kind of people I'm looking for within a Ramble Entertainment community. So, yeah, Volt finally able to stunlock enemies. Very cool. And so what if a mod for bows was capable of doing that, where it just creates a 15-meter area of effect, these enemies get stunned, don't even have to kill them with a bow. Pop out a pistol or something and use the pistol to finish off those enemies in a faster manner. Same thing if there was a fire mod. Rain fire from the sky over an area of effect, light your enemies on fire, and actually do damage, you know, and that damage scales. And people are going to say, well, these kinds of mods in the game don't actually scale. However, again, we can look at what the devs have said. The devs were talking on DevStream 72, and even, you know, and appreciate you, Rebecca, bringing this up, but they even said, you know, like, don't, you know, take this as what's going to happen. We're only looking at it. They brought up Combustion Beam. They brought up that they're looking at Combustion Beam potentially scaling. So if Combustion Beam can scale, so could explosive mods, and so could other clever mods that you could equip to weapons to do these area of effects to make them more efficient and make them more a part of the highest tiers, the higher tier plays of the game, where you use the most efficient weapons. Herder. And so you look at mods like that, and, you know, you could take something like Combustion Beam and put it on the Flux Rifle or the Amprex. Oh god, the Amprex. Oh man, I really hope they scale the Amprex with Damage 3.0, because that weapon needs like 12 mod slots to really be functional. It needs red crit to actually do damage. It needs extra status to do more of that damage. It needs range. It needs ammo. It needs... Jeez, the needs on that weapon. And, yeah, anyway. So, the Amprex, you know, might scale better with Damage 3.0, and that's actually something even worth talking about here, is that the scaling that the devs have talked about with Damage 3.0 might not be exactly what we think it is. So what they've talked about is that you start off with a weapon, and by the time you reach level 30, potentially, that weapon is at its max stats. It didn't start at its max stats. It achieves its max stats when it's at 30. What if it doesn't reach its max stats at 30? What if there's still some things to be unlocked? You know, there are these stars above our weapons, and through putting these stars, forma, on our weapons, we allow them to achieve higher levels. We allow them to have more mods, more capacity, more mod slots. Or not more mod slots. Well, the Exilus counts as a mod slot. I'm rambling. So, what if we had Let's use... What's a fun one? Let's use the heck as an example, because one of the things I really wanted to make sure I proved this to myself before I went ahead with this video, because I've been using the Ignis a lot, and, you know, I'd go back to some of my preferreds, like the Soma and the Prisma Gurkata, and I'd be like, these aren't achieving the same efficiency. What's a really, you know, like, one of those weapons that everybody was like, you gotta use it, it's super powerful. I put the heck on for an exterminate. And of course, you know, what I was able to see with my eyes, these things, was that it just was nowhere near as efficient. An exterminate in the void, which should have taken me 3 to 5 minutes, took me like 10 to 12 minutes, because I was taking the time with the heck, not using powers, again, just really trying to emphasize this to myself, that, you know, the weapons are really hard to compare. And it was a Vacor heck, and yes, it had the proc, but that proc isn't a constant area of effect. And so, yeah, let's take the heck, and let's say you 2-forma the heck. And it creates not a passive, a conditional. So we've started to see these conditional mods come into the game. And that they really allow for some unique opportunities, but what if the opportunities were also AOE? And the heck has an AOE effect that is implemented once you've at least formed it twice. Or something more, let's say you have reached so much capacity on the heck. Now that one's too complicated. Let's stick with the 2-star heck. So you've formed the heck twice, and now you've unlocked an AOE effect. Every time you fire 5 shots from the heck, the 5th shot that goes into the enemy at the enemy's location causes it to explode in like a... Let's just go extreme. This might be a bit too extreme, but let's just go extreme for shits and giggles. It causes a 20-meter explosion of corrosive damage. Oh, how cool would that be? Same concept could apply in, again, if we're looking back at conditional mods. What if I want to use the Soma? And the Soma, so like rifles are lumped into particular categories depending on how they fire, and etc., etc. And you put this mod on the Soma, and every time you get up to, let's say, 30 rounds into an enemy, because I'm sure multi-shot will probably be a stat within the realm of Damage 3.0. The reason I believe that multi-shot will be a stat that grows on weapons instead of just being one of those mods that you just equip, because they've said they want to get rid of those, well, you just equip it, duh, kind of mods. And also, we're used to multi-shot. We love just seeing that explosion of numbers. There's something about that and being human that you just enjoy. And so if the multi-shot stat grows and we're able to pump 30 shots into an enemy, because you might not be able to do that with all the little plebs running around that you kill in like 5 shots, you focus a bombard with the Soma, you get 30 shots into it, it causes a massive radiation proc. Let's say the proc actually grows with the number of shots, and when you reach 30 shots, that's when it really exponentially explodes, and it creates this radiation bubble that any enemies or heck, even friendlies, potentially, that walk into it are not only procced with radiation, but take radiation damage. Cool potentials here. And again, conditionals are in the game. Procs and powers that grow in the game are in the game. They're under Warframes, but that's not a difficult thing to really say in code. There is this thing that will grow to this potential size when this is met. Stats. It's a stats-based game. And one thing I nearly touched on before we end this segment, the topic for the week, stance mods for primaries and secondaries. And that sounds a bit weird, but let's go ahead and flush that out. So, let's say we did stance mods for primaries and secondaries. What would that look like? It's obviously not a stance because you're not going to twirl the gun around your head, although that might be cool to some people. Instead, what if these stance mods do certain things for certain weapons? Again, let's refer to the Heck, and hell, let's put the Sancti Tigris in there with the Heck too, because these are two of the shotguns that fire at a slow rate, have small clips, and function in nearly the same fashion. Whereas compared to the Sobek and the KOM, K-O-H-M, depending on how you like to pronounce it, comb, whatever, those two weapons fire rapidly, so these kinds of stance mods that would go on these two shotgun primaries, it basically fits better on those two. So you have these two shotguns, and let's return to the idea I used with the Heck earlier. You put this stance on the Heck or the Sancti Tigris. You get 5 shots off with it, and then it does this big area proc. Cool. And unlike what you do with the Syndicate weapons, this is a lot more controllable. Instead, like there's just experience popping up around you, and your area of effect might go off without you really wanting it to, because it just killed a single enemy. Woo! Control! So let's say there's these two stance mods for these two shotguns. One releases a giant heat wave. Awesome. So it heat procs, and then the other does a big corrosive wave. And again, you pump 5 shots into an enemy, and these waves release from within that enemy, whatever the 5th shot goes into, whether it's as long as it's an enemy. If you, say, shot it into the floor, wouldn't work. You wasted your opportunity to do an explosion. Or if you miss, it's almost kind of a balancing act, where be more accurate and get a big AOE effect. So there are opportunities like that. Again, you could put... So you see the Spear of Prime in my hands, and granted, those are pretty freaking powerful enough. But let's say you want the Spear of Prime to be able to compete with something like the Adamus, where you fire for like 3 seconds and you've just killed 6 enemies. Instead, you're firing like 3 per enemy, and then you gotta fire at another enemy, and another enemy, and another enemy, and TTK, time to kill. Getting a lot more weapons, not all of them, because you're not always going to be able to use every single weapon, but trying to get a lot of weapons on that level, because again, variety is our castle, and as the kings, we want to be most efficient. So we're going to basically want something like, not explosions, because, explosions, there are already explosions. Let's say we return to this kind of electrical mechanic where you fire a Spear of Prime dart and it releases a lightning bolt. But unlike the electricity that we were talking about with the Paris, the lightning bolts that come out of the Spira once they make contact with an enemy, or say a conditional where you have to hit them in the head with the Spira, it releases a lightning bolt that chains between up to 8 enemies. And it does some pretty decent damage. Let's say 0.6 of the damage that was done with the dart. That's pretty darn good, especially when you're doing crit damage, or say if you don't want to use the explosive build on the Hikau Prime, or Hiko, I believe is the proper pronunciation. I actually looked that one up at some point. Then you're just releasing a bunch of darts all of a sudden, and you have a lot more chances to release that proc. And yes, the damage is much more reduced compared to the Spear Prime, because the Hikau Prime don't do as much damage, but you're releasing a crap ton more of them, so you're releasing that effect a lot more. And I don't think stance mods are really that foreign an idea, because they work with melee weapons, they will give us more capacity, less formatting, so more time with more weapons. And if a kind of stance mod or AOE mod was released for weapons in Damage 3.0, and some of the mod polarities change, and people are like, oh, but I formatted this perfectly, oh man, and that's another nerd voice, then what we have is an opportunity to be like, yes, you formatted that perfectly, but hey, here's 10 free polarity. So instead of having to reformat that 5 times, you only have to format it like once or twice, because you just got a whole bunch more polarity. So I feel like there's a lot of opportunities there with the idea of stance mods for weapons, and I'm going to keep calling them that until we actually have a proper name. But I think it's not that bad an idea, because we already see that on melee weapons, and the benefit it gives to our melee weapons. You know, we're going to be having Fury Prime coming up for us this year, and that will probably be some of the first times that people actually form on melee weapons, because otherwise, because of those stance mods, you don't really need to form on your melee weapons. And with Fury Prime probably being a rank 10, that'll probably cost 1 forma per weapon, pretty much. And there, like I said, there's some hints that the devs give us in there, and I'm just playing with their words. These aren't things they're actually saying, but there are things we can take away from the things they say to give us hope for the way in which the game will look in the future. You know, you look at things like when coptering was just nuts, like everybody was just coptering with their melee, and how the devs handled that with Movement 2.0, where coptering basically became the way in which you move. I mean, you can see it in a lot of the way I move, where I'm just constantly flinging myself through the air and rolling. That was basically what people did with stav weapons. But now you don't have to anymore, and it opened up the variety. So, these are very creative devs, and I'm not here to, you know, like, sing their praises way too much. You know, everybody screws up, but I really appreciate the Warframe devs, and I'm going to go ahead and switch screens before I get to that. I've been Chaos SD. I really appreciate the devs, because I came from a game like Destiny, where a lot of the problems with Destiny actually rely a lot on the devs. They don't talk to their community. They don't release updates rapidly, no matter how crappy their engine is. They should be more involved. And when it comes to Warframe, Digital Extremes is very involved. They release content constantly for PC, and almost once a month, once every 1.5 months, sometimes every 2 months, for what am I? I'm a console player. For console players. And yeah, we can really appreciate what they're doing. We can appreciate we should appreciate their creativity. We shouldn't, you know, hold them in the highest regard. Sometimes you gotta you gotta get out there and be like, hey guys, you know, this seems like a screw up. The Celestia seems like a screw up. But there's no need to be harsh. I feel like a lot of people are harsh enough on themselves these days. Toxicity has become a bit too rampant on the internet, and I think it is starting to calm down, but there's still a lot of it out there. And so, you know, what I want to do in these shows and Stay of the Frame, as Scott, hi, I'm Scott, is really just talk about the things that the devs might be capable of doing, the awesome things we might see, and also maybe help guide this community potentially with, you know, the things I say and the things you guys might say to me to get me thinking and get me talking to you guys, to help guide this community to, you know, say, like, here's what we want worked on, you know, more AOE weapons, more of our old weapons that could do AOE before Damage 3.0. So, cool thoughts. And I hope you have, you know, I hope this maybe got you thinking a bit deeper about some of the systems. I wanted to go with some of the more challenging topics, like Trinity. But I'm not going to do that. I didn't want to do that in the first episode because it's the first episode. I did a lot of umming and uhing, and it's just me talking to a robot eye, and yeah. So, again, I want to remind people of a couple things before I wrap up. This is a work-in-progress show. Much like Warframe is a work-in-progress game, and we shouldn't be excessively hard on the devs. Please don't be excessively hard on me. This was the first episode, and I've gotten used to being able to talk to people. I'm very hard on myself when it comes to even editing these videos. I look at myself and I'm like, you're a freaking schmuck. What are you doing on camera? And I continue to try and improve. We've been improving with graphics. We've been improving with a lot of the things we do, in a lot of the ways we present content and the things we say, and we're going to be a channel that tries to grow for you guys out there. But we want to be a channel for you guys who want to be constructive for us. We're not out there for those of you who just want to leave toxic comments. And if you are, you know, somebody who leaves toxic comments, know that you can stick around if you choose to grow, but, that's not our wheelhouse. It's not a lot of people's wheelhouses. In fact, I don't know if it's anybody's wheelhouse to be like, oh man, that toxic guy, he's totally on point. I do suck, and I should kill myself and get cancer, and nobody likes it. So, yeah, this was the first episode. Please also bear in mind that I have some divisive opinions about the game. It's a very versatile game. Not everybody wants to get into the highest tiers of game. Not everybody's going to play with the AOE weapons. Some people are going to, say that Oberon is just as good as Trandy, which is kind of like, she does a lot more. And so, just appreciate that I might not be for you if you feel like my opinions are so off compared to yours. But I know there is an audience for me out there. I know I like to talk to a lot of the clan members in my clan, and much like I've talked here, we talk about such things in-game, and so I wanted to share those things. I've been Scott. You can tweet at me at ChaosSD. We're working on a Twitter for the main YouTube hub, Ramble-Entertainment. I hope you guys enjoyed what I had to do here. As a reminder, State of the Frame will post on the off weeks for the dev streams. I don't want to get in the way of the dev streams. I don't want to cover what the dev streams cover. They do a great enough job covering what they're doing with the game. Great job, keep it up, DE. I might do a different kind of Warframe show on the off weeks. We'll see. We'll see how the kind of reception this video receives, if I choose to put it on the forums. I hope you guys appreciate what I tried to do here in this episode, and hopefully I can demonstrate more of my abilities that philosophy, I was a communications major and a philosophy minor. I was like 2 classes off from getting the philosophy major, but I chose not to pursue it because I was at that point exhausted with school and just wanted to just grab the degree and be done. But philosophy has empowered me with a lot of critical thinking, and I hope I instilled some of that critical thinking within you, the viewers, today, or whenever you watch this video at night or in the morning. And yeah, I've been rambling, so I'm going to go ahead and shut this down before I continue to ramble your faces off even more. Thank you for watching, and this has been my show. Welcome.